Right, hey everyone, I'm Klloo. So, I want to talk Marvels, right? Part of Mistveil has a nice plethora of Marvels, but there's some things going for them, and there's also some things not necessarily going for them. One, the majority that we've seen are legendary, right? So they are playable cards, but they're one-offs, right? You only need one of in either a Blitz or a Classic Constructed deck. So that already puts a strain on demand. Then we also have the art style, right? So we have the general realism of Flesh and Blood, and then we have, traditional Japanese artistry, right? Would you even call it traditional? This would be more so traditional, but obviously it's a departure from what Fab usually uses. And from my perspective, although I like the art, right, and I played and collected other card games with this style of art and have enjoyed it, it's not something I can say I generally wanted to see with Flesh and Blood, or something that appeals to me in terms of collecting Flesh and Blood. Having these in, any fashion versus the Sacred Arts or the Marvel Heroes, with the exception of Enigma, right, is a big point to me, because I look at them and while, yeah, they're pretty, they're colorful, they're just not as impactful visually to me as the normal style of Flesh and Blood. So I think that is going to be somewhat strenuous for them as well, because I have seen that talked about. Now, funny enough, I like pointing out the cards to my partner because she enjoys the artwork, and when I was showing her the heroes initially, straight away she just went, what's with Enigma, the young Enigma, because it does look quite different. I really like the young Enigma, right, more so than these other cards. The Rising Sun, Setting Moon, a bit more, right, because it's tonally, I think, a bit better, whereas these are very bright, almost pop art style, especially this, right, which, again, composition-wise, it's a good piece of art from my perspective, from my understanding of art, but it's just not tonally anything equivalent to Flesh and Blood, right? Look at this. Look at the strenuous. Look at the veins popping, right? That's the type of artwork I want from that. Now, the reason I say all this is a big factor that is weighing on my mind is where Marvels are going, because it feels with Partner Mistveil that they're just going down the same road as Cold Wars, where eventually they will cease to really be enjoyable, really be collectible, because they're not necessary a scarcity. Now, the heroes will be beloved and treasured. I have no question of that. But these other common Marvels, right? We'll call them common Marvels because we know they're common rarity, which I believe they're all common rarity. So I thought initially it was going to be 5, some rare and then some majestic, but it seems like we have the Sacred Arts and then we just have this slew of commons. And whether or not you think that impacts the rarity by way of just the ratio, so the ratio of these lower classified Marvels versus the Sacred Arts and the Heroes, or if there is some sort of internal rarity that LSS has tweaked and these are going to be more common, more apparent, I can't see these being heavily cherished, heavily desirable, heavily played cards. And when I say all that, obviously they are really impactful for the Mystic class. They are very much playable across the board. But let me put it to you this way. If LSS were to make a brute wizard Marvel, right? And they just throw it out there. It's playable in both. It's really desirable. All of a sudden that attracts large aspects of different communities, right? Because when it comes to Flesh and Blood, you've got people who play the meta, people who play fun, interesting decks, and people who play the fantasy, right? They play the class and heroes that they like. So again, by targeting Wizard and Brute, I would assume, from my perspective, that they would be able to capture a larger portion of the audience. The issue with these Marvels is they are for all 3 Mystics. They are in the same set, meaning that anyone who was chasing these or interested in these is already most likely predispositioned to already play all 3 Mystics. Even if they weren't, given the playstyle that we're seeing with Chi and its overall nature, right? Play a blue, transcend, build Chi, then go into your payoff. It seems as though functionally there's going to be a huge overlap in style, which is fine, right? As opposed to, say, Tales, where you've got the different elementals, or Draconic and the chainlink stuff, right? Going into Phoenix Flame, going into Rupture, going into Dragons, right? It's similar, but there is a greater departure, at least to me. Whereas all these feel like, again, you're trying to build Chi, you're playing blue, and then you go into your big payoffs, right? If we just take the Marvels as the Transcend cards, it means there are 17 minus 6, so 11, but then 3 you can't play in everyone, so that makes 9, because you minus 2. So there's 9 Transcend cards for you to run. So 9 Chi generation, 9, combo pieces, if you will. In a Blitz deck, I can see them all, again, running that same sort of style. Blue, Chi, Transcend, blue, payoff, then normal, ninja, assassin, or illusionist stuff. In Clash Constructed, it's probably going to be a lot slower, but I would still expect them to run by nature all the Transcend gimmicks, right? Which means that they are going to have that big overlap in playstyle and then diverge at the big payoff moment, which, again, to me, it's if you're going to play Mystic, you're going to experiment with all 3. If you're going to experiment with all 3, you still only need 1 copy of each, right? Aside from the Sacreds, but then you still only need 1 copy of each because everything's legendary. So the legendary sort of works against it from my perspective. The fact that they're common is definitely going to impact it. And then the fact that the art style, right? Would you rather, simply put, would you rather have one of these or this? I can tell you straight away from collecting Fab, from playing Fab, from enjoying the sets, this is the art I want, not so much this. This is the piece I'd much rather, savor, have in a binder, than a kitten stirring the pot. As cute, as fun as that is, it's a bit quirky, and it's not really the style that Fab has built up. Now, do you think this style was necessary, right? Because I feel like Fab could have really stood its ground in the Japanese market. They didn't need this stylization of cards. Or even if they went the route that other cards game have done, and just in the Japanese language, aside from the 2 pieces that we're going to find out whatever they are, the 1 Marvel, 1 Legendary, they had these as alt art in just the Japanese language. I think that would have worked as well. But funny enough, MTG, if you look through a lot of the Strixhaven Mystical archives, it's very similar to these, but I would say that across the board, the artwork ends up being grittier, right, than this, which again is super impactful because I feel Fab built itself on its gritty, realistic art style, right? That's real gory, real mature, and not this. Again, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I love the colors, but it's just not Fab to me. So yeah, when it comes to Marvels, I can't help but feel they are heading down the pathway of Cold Falls, and they will become just this thing that's in a box. If you get it, cool. And the only real collectible aspect of Fab will be the promos, which is fine. Again, it's nice to have something from nothing in terms of being able to reward people who, go to events, play in events, win events, participate in all the social stuff of Flesh and Blood. It's fantastic to be able to do that as a company, to help buff up the prize pools and, reward everyone across it, not just the people who are competing at the highest level. So I do think that is fantastic, but I would like something worthwhile in the box, and it would suck if it's just, well, now we have to come up with another thing. Cold Falls slowly degraded over time, the interest in them, and then we came up with Marvels. Marvels were doing all right. We had our big chase pieces per rarity, our big chase pieces per desirability, but now it's just, let's just have a ton of them, right? I mean, think of it in terms of like Outsiders and the codexes. All the codexes are $100 plus, even though only really Frailty is hugely played. And I think that was fine, right? They were chase cards. They were equivalent to the Fable. You then go to Dynasty, for instance, and you have 14, a lot of them being equipment, a lot of them being okay, not great, right, in terms of playability and desirability, but it was still okay because you had the big chase elements. But what you also tend to see is they're all in the same pool, so one or more of the actual desirable cards end up siphoning away the value of everything else. The young and old heroes of heavy hitters, for instance, right? Kasai Young starts at 70. Kasai Old is the top card at 360. Betsy and Kasai is already a $30 difference, right? And Betsy's not played and probably not overly desirable. So I see that completely happening with Mistveil as well, where the heroes, even the young heroes, are just going to siphon away the value. And pulling a Marvel becomes this thing, well, great, I got one of these cards. They're super hard to pull. Well, not super hard, but call it 1 in 2 cases if they keep that as the baseline. But unfortunately, it's one of these. Even in heavy hitters, I can imagine pulling a young hero feels disappointing. It's a 50-50 whether or not you get something that the community actually desires, and you probably also desire more. And then sometimes you get a young and it just feels bad. but this is on a greater scale, right? Because there is going to be more of these than the adult heroes, right? 3 out of the 17 will be the most desirable cards, whether or not they have a higher pull rate or it's the same pull rate. If they have a higher pull rate, God knows how expensive they're going to be. But yeah, it just becomes a feel bad, similar to pulling a low tier cold foil. Whereas Outsiders, again, even if I got Inertia, I would still be pretty dang happy. If I got some of the equipment in Dynasty, sure, not so much. If I got any of the dragons, back to pretty dang happy, even though they aren't actually that valuable cards, right? Despite the rares being the most played in decks, I believe they're all around $20-ish or something like that last time I looked at it. But the point is, right, when do we go, this is no longer the collectible piece. It's just something fun and interesting that they've included. It's just a weird concept to me because there is no semblance of order to it. The amount of marbles they print, the type of marbles they print is very much just up to LSS. And even the Fable in itself, being the pinnacle piece of Fab, is dwindling because the marbles can greatly overshadow that, right? Just given the right conditions. So I don't know how to feel about Mistveil, because when I heard the plethora of marbles, I was going, great, right? We'll get something for Enigma. It's fine. They'll all be desirable. They'll just be her thing. Some of the angels, similar to the dragons. It's something to actually collect a full set of because they have unity to them. Instead, we get this, and they're okay, but they're not Fab to me. And I think that is somewhat of an issue because, again, I don't feel like LSS needed to do this. I feel like they really could have had a solid footing with their style of art, with their style of game, rather than including these pieces. Now, the other thing that I sort of want to talk about is the psychology behind marbles and their collectible nature. So why are class cards most collectible, and why are the adult versions? Well, this is my perspective. They stay on board, and class constructors is significantly more played. Simple as that, right? Equipment and heroes, because there's something you get to show off front and center, a decent investment. Even the demi-heroes, right? You chuck in the rarity, plus then the fact that once you play it, it stays on board. It is more impactful to someone utilizing these cards than these, right? A card that A, gets flipped over. We don't know if this is the chi back, even if it's just this is the... No, that's not correct. Where's the nice little chi art? Yeah, there we go. Even if that's the backing of every single one of them, well, that's going to get redundant, right? Because it's just the same artwork over and over again. Second, once you play it and flip it over, that's the artwork you're stuck with, and then it also goes back in your deck. So it's something you get to show off every now and then, so it's not really worth the investment, the worth of being flashy, versus something like a hero where, again, it's front and center for your opponent to aura at, and you feel like you have gotten your money's worth in terms of showing it off. Now, in terms of hoarding and putting in a binder, yes, people do that. I do that as well. But again, Fab is just not a great collectible game. It's not that the collectible aspect isn't there. It's just been so greatly overshadowed by the playable aspect. How much people enjoy playing the game, how much people just want the cards to play with. It's why we see even the worst versions of a card be grossly pulled up with the higher rarities, because they're just more scarce than actually desirable by pull rate, right? So it is interesting to me, but it is also worrisome, because this might be the point where Marvels just stop being Marvels, stop being marvelous, right? They just become something you get, something that's okay, but across the board, it's just another random chance at the actual cards you really want, right? 3 out of 17. Wonder what comes next. Bit pessimistic, but yeah, that is just my line of thinking at the moment. I don't know. Are you excited for these? Definitely makes me just not care so much about, again, going through a few cases. I want to play the cards. I want to experience a set. But again, by and large, there's just been very little for me to desire opening wise. Anyway, let me know what you think. See ya.